Hello, everybody. Welcome to the next session on the Alt-E Solar Conference. Next up is Sol-Ark, more power with less cost than others using Sol-Ark load management. With us today is Tom Brennan. He will be presenting.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate it. I'm Tom Brennan, Chief Technical Officer for Sol-Ark. And let me see if I can share my screen. Okay, great.
Take it away.
Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about several things. And I wonder if I can get this to go away. Hopefully you don't see this mute and start video. Is that covering the slides? I hope not. Oops. Okay.
I think that's just for you to see. I don't think it's.
Oh, good. Okay,
Yep.
awesome.
Yep.
So what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about a few of the outdoor improvements to around the Sol-Ark 12K inverter. And it's basically about trying to make it simpler to install. Then we'll talk about some of the software improvements that we've made to make it easier to debug. And then we're going to talk a little bit, we're going to give you a preview of our new ESS design tool that's coming out in February on our website. And this is going to enable you to design ESS systems much more easily and based upon the customer's loads and needs. A lot of the people that are installers that are part of Alt-E, either in Alt-E or an installer and buy from Alt-E, are very experienced people. And this tool may be a little bit simplistic for you guys, but for the vast majority of people, they really need help on how to size batteries and how to size inverters. And then we'll look at a preview of our smart load in July that is all focused on lowering the costs. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, on Energy Sage, which rates different solar companies, we did the math and looked into this, and it turns out we're #1 in customer and installer satisfaction. If you go to our website, you can click on it and you can see the reviews. These are both from customers and installers, and we have 5 out of 5 stars. That's really impressive. Anyway, we encourage you to share the news and share your experiences with Sol-Ark. If we did not give you, or if we did not, if you feel that we didn't give you a 5-star, if you, by the way, Jeff, can you hear me? Or Jay?
Yes, I can hear you. Yep.
Okay. Yep. Somebody online says they couldn't hear. Anyway, if you feel like we didn't give you 5-star service, then let us know where we were deficient, because we're all about improving. The reason our inverter is quite good is because we listen to our customers and installers, and we want to thank you for being patient with us and for help improving us. One thing that we definitely need improvement on is better app notes. The manual is pretty thick. There's a lot of capability on the system, and so we wanted to document in a short fashion little app notes things like different modes, AC coupling, generators, CT installs, off-grid, parallel stacking, battery setup and communication, Wi-Fi, and our online power view monitoring tool. Also, what you'll see in February is a complete website makeover. You simply pick if you're an installer or you're an end customer, and it takes you to the things that are most relevant to you. Okay, so here's the Sol-Ark 12K/8K outdoor unit. It can certainly be installed indoors. It has a NEMA 3R rating. The charge controllers, the MPPTs are built in. You can see that on the right. And so we can handle up to 4 strings and about 13 kilowatts of PV. And then there's 2 inverters built in, one for split phase. And then we have a gen input or AC coupling input. And then that goes to our loads. And then also we have a grid input with 63 amp bypass. You know, some of the improvements we made on this system were from our installers again that said, hey, we want to be able to put a gutter right underneath the system. And so we had to move the Wi-Fi and the PV disconnect switch over to the left-hand side, but now it makes wiring a lot easier. Another thing was that installers said, hey, we want outdoor installation capability. It just saves us from having to build it in a box. And so we did. This is unlike a lot of other NEMA 3R inverters. They take an indoor rated inverter and they put it into a box that is a shell that's outdoor rated. Now, the drawback of that is you still get dust and you still get humidity into the electronics. So but our design is completely isolating the electronics from all the dust and all the moisture. And this gives it a 20 plus year lifespan, design lifetime. We also improve the cooling. And we, as I talked to, we already simplified the installation. Okay, so we can AC couple up to 9.6 through the generator breaker. It's a 50 amp breaker. And we can do 13 kilowatts of DC/AC coupled, a 250 amp battery breakers built in, and 63 amp bypass. Okay, so our installers are all around the country. So if you're not, okay, if you go to our website and you can't find yourself on our map, then please just contact us. We'll make sure that you've done an install or so, and we can add you to that. Okay, so, and then also you can find distributors here as well. But we want to advertise for you. We want you to bring you more business, and the website's one of the best ways to do that, and allowing people to find you. Okay. So as far as inverter software improvements and other things, we did quite a few developments. You can hear that you know, we introduced stacking for 240 volt. That's been around for a while, and you can do anywhere from 2 to 8. But you can also stack 208 systems, and we can, you know, you can do 208 with just a single system. However, you won't be able to do all of the 3 phases. You'll just be able to do 2 of the 3. So if you get 2 inverters and stack them on 3 phase, then you can hit all 3 phases, but they're not completely balanced, which is still fine from the utility standpoint. But if you do 3, 6, or 9, then it's completely balanced 208. Another nice thing is, you know, the master programs all the slaves. You don't have to do anything but the master programming. Also, since we did more installations out in the countryside where they use aluminum wire, we introduced larger CTs, but then with big parallel systems, we introduced these ginormous 2-inch 600 amp CTs that fit around your wrist. A couple things to note is if you want to auto learn the CTs, that only works, so you can miswire the CTs different directions and all kinds of other things. However, it only works if you're 12240, and it only works if you have batteries connected to the grid. That's how we're able to determine the direction and so forth. Okay, we did some time of use improvements. We're able to use the CTs to figure out, you know, if AC coupled panels are producing more power than the house is consuming, and then it charges the batteries. And it does that, charges the batteries. It powers the loads in the house, then it charges the batteries, and then after that, excess current goes back to the grid. If you also look at the over here at the right-hand side in the right lower corner, you see that we also added a cell column, so we can charge, like for example, AC charge off of AC coupled panels, but we can, or a generator or the grid, and we can also sell back to the grid on a time-by-time basis. Okay, we also introduced gen and grid peak shaving. The gen uses the CT sensors that are built into the generator port. The grid peak shaving uses the external CTs. And this allows us to, you know, do not overload a generator, let's say. Also, if you see this, we allow, you can use different CTs if you want. You just have to enter in the different ratio, although our CTs work very well. We also, in the time of use column, we allowed the customers to turn off a generator early. It was before this, the generator would charge up to almost full on the batteries when it was triggered, and once it reached 5%, it would turn off the generator. Now you can enable time of use, and if you have it set to 50%, it'll only charge up, it'll trigger, let's say you have it triggered at 20%, it will charge back up until you get to that time of use battery percentile, okay, and shut off. We also have field replaceable relays as in our earlier 12K design. And some other things. You'll see that in our GUI screen, we kind of move the icons. Customers said it made more sense to have them up here, and that they were basically the system was down below, and that was the Sol-Ark. And so, hey, good idea. So we adopted it. And then if you touch the battery screen, then that'll bring up this detailed screen, and you'll see now you'll be able to see visibility on the gen port. So let's say you have a small generator there, and you can tell if it's producing power or not. You can see the voltage, the frequency, and the watts. Or you can see if your AC coupled panels are producing and how much they're producing. Likewise, if you hit the setup screen, that's where you get all these screens on the right. So anyway, another thing, we added the ability to do, we've always been able to do dark start with DC panels, DC coupled panels. So the inverter shuts down, the sun comes, even if the battery goes completely dead or the BMS shuts off on the lithium, you can, when the sun comes back up, it fires up the computers and it starts the MPPTs and it starts charging the battery back up enough until then it'll turn on the AC out, the inverter output. But that's a big challenge on AC coupled panels. So if on AC coupled panels, if you drain the battery completely, then you can't start up, you can't recharge the system because those AC coupled panels require a reference. So we implemented something called AC coupled dark start, and it allows a small reserve in the battery, and it's quite impressive as to how it works. Basically, it waits till the next day and then fires up the inverter for a short period. We introduced LAN support and Wi-Fi in the same dongle. And for those customers, we decided to finally have an update dongle for remote locations. There are some customers that don't have satellite coverage, they don't have cell service, and they don't have internet. So for those customers, they had no way to update the software and the systems because we constantly try and improve and add new features and do bug fixes. Anyway, these update dongles allow you to just simply plug it into the system, and it will automatically update the COM and MCU versions. And you can keep the dongle and reload the latest version of software on the dongle so that it's always up to date. So those are some of the things that we've improved. Okay, another thing that people wanted is the ability to shut down not just the PV, but to shut down the AC inverter output and the battery. So we added this this rapid shutdown button input. It's a normally open button, but if you close it, this will turn off not just the PV, the rapid shutdown 12-volt supply that turns off the solar panels, but it also turns off the inverter output. So that's another feature. There is also a 12-volt rapid shutdown input signal if you so choose, but that's rare. Let's see, what other things? We added termination on the parallel bus. So if you're doing you only need to terminate the parallel bus on the first and the last systems. So all the others, you can turn off the termination with these two switches. This is important when you're doing, let's say, 4 and on up of parallel gaining capability. We also got the feedback we need more Modbus ports. So the Modbus 40, there's one Modbus port here, and then the CAN bus is both a CAN bus and a Modbus port. So we can support up to 2 Modbuses for other periphery type items. Question is, any support for wind turbines in the inverter? Yes, that is something we're working on now. We hope to have it available in early Q2 so that you can plug a wind turbine directly into the MPPTs. And that way you don't need an external charge controller and you don't need a load dump, and it keeps, it's like maximum power point tracking for a wind turbine. And then I don't see what this, no, the bypass, don't know what that meant. Okay, all right. I'll try and pay more attention to the questions. Okay, so because we're so efficient in our inverter and we do a lot of things, we have over 20 battery partners. In addition to kilovolt, you can see a bunch of others. We've also implemented closed loop communications where okay, I'll explain how the bypass works in just a minute. We did closed loop communications with Stores, Blue Ion, Simplifies Amplify batteries, and Discover and Fortress. This is where the battery actually programs the inverter. You don't have to program it. You just tell it the right address and enable lithium communication and the cable. And so then it aggregates the batteries up and tells it how many amp hours, what's the maximum charge and discharge rates, what voltage to charge to, what's the state of charge, what's the state of health, and so on and so forth. So it automatically adapts for different climates. It just makes it a whole lot easier, and it makes it much more accurate on the state of charge. Okay, so if we talk about how the bypass works, the way the bypass is that we have the inverter and we synchronize to the grid, and then we're able to use both the grid and the inverter simultaneously to power the loads. So we can use any amount of power from the grid or the inverter. So it's a seamless bypass. In addition, if there is a problem with the system, what will happen is, let's say there's some particular alarm, like a GFCI detection on the MPPT strings. What will happen is the inverter will shut down as required by law, but we will bypass the grid over to the loads so that the loads stay powered, and it requires a power cycle to resolve. So likewise, if there's some failure in the inverter, there is a bypass as well so that the grid automatically connects to the loads to keep it powered if it can, if the computers are still operational. Okay, so other improvements that we made is better debug capability through our PowerView app. There was a lot done in terms of fleet management so that we could have different levels of logins, one basic for customer and a more advanced for installer, so that the installer can see a lot of their different plants on the right side. And it gives you a nice overview of how many are online, how many are normal, how many faulted, and so on and so forth. In addition, we can aggregate parallel units now under the same plant name, and that just makes it easier for managing parallel units. And also, as we've been able to do with this app, is we can check your settings, but we can also remote program the settings. So you can see the flow of the system, which is easy for a customer. Then you can see the energy generation, how much it's exported, imported, charged from the grid, or or this doesn't look like we're using batteries here. But my favorite chart is the custom chart. This allows me to graph anything on the system and compare it to anything else. And it's really, really beneficial to find issues and resolve them. Someone answered if the installer can program the customers, and that's yes. Okay, so a couple more things that we want to do is there's some inverter improvements. We're finding that we need to improve some of the tracking with parallel inverters, especially when we're using very large generators, and because it can sometimes cause an F18 overload, because the generator is quite powerful compared to the inverters. So that's something that we're looking at resolving in a few weeks. Also, the ability to see the gen relay contactor is engaged or not on the screen. This is helpful to make sure that that your 2-wire start on the generator is working correctly. Also, the ability to turn on and off the generator manually via the 2-wire start on the system. And then the last thing is when we AC and DC couple systems, the AC side is especially problematic because if we're using a generator, we are locked to that generator frequency. We can't control the frequency of the inverter, so it doesn't allow us to control the AC coupled panels like we should, and so it can lead to overcharging. So what we're doing is if you wire the AC coupled panels into the gen input, then we can disconnect that gen input. Let's see. Then we can disconnect that gen input if the generator is running. Okay. 2020 code requires external battery disconnects. Do you have support for this? No, not at this time. Stacking 208 versus 3-phase. If I stack 6 of the 8K inverters, does it mean that I'll have 48 kilowatts of capacity at 3-phase? Okay, so first of all, the 8 kilowatt inverter does not support stacking, so you would need the 12 kW, and that outputs 9 kilowatts of AC power output. So 9 times 6, let's do 56. So it'd be 56 kilowatts of capacity at 3-phase. Oh, 54. Thank you. All right. Okay. So these are some of the software improvements for the inverter. Some other improvements that we want to do to PowerView is a little bit better in terms of alerts, especially let's say you're off grid. If you're off grid, the inverter, the generator is going to come through the grid input port and free up the generator port for other things. So we want to be able to have an auto gen start failed alert. Hey, we signaled the generator to come on, but it didn't come on either on the grid port or the gen port. So let's send an alert. Okay, great to see generator improvements. Will we be able to add the generator manual control as well as the ability to see the generator contactor to an existing unit? Yes, these are all software updates. So yes, we can add these to an existing unit. What is the microsurge rating for power line EM radiation levels in your inverter? I don't know. Is there going to be a grid back alert? In my case, I don't expect export to the grid. I have it as a backup. I know when it's out because of the alert, but sometimes don't know when it comes back. I'll get to that in a little bit. Yes, I think we should have a grid back alert. That's a good point. We also want to see if some more generator capabilities in the charting in the charts. So typically I'd go under the grid and there's lots of different actual graphical views, and it's just a little bit challenging for an end customer to find the right chart. So we want to make that a little bit easier for both the grid and the generator. Let's see, power flow battery icon should also show voltage in addition to the state of charge percent. And then also the plant list, when you're looking at a bunch of plants, we need to be able to see, is the grid up or down? You know, is the battery state of charge? Where's that? And some of the other things. So if you have suggestions, there is a new release of PowerView just today. So if you have more suggestions besides these, please feel free to email us at support@solark.com and we will investigate. Okay. Grid back, I like the grid back alert. Has the 12K manual been corrected for 3-phase connections? I certainly hope so. In PowerView, is there some way to pull monthly reports in perhaps a spreadsheet format to be able to keep a history of how the system is performing? I believe there is now, but I will let someone else answer that. Will your inverter communicate with the kilovolt HAB unit? That is a question for Alti. We've given them the communication interface, and that several of them that we support. So that's up to Alti to implement that. Can the Sol-Ark frequency shift for AC coupling? Yes, we've done zillions of AC coupled solutions, both AC coupled and DC coupled simultaneously. But yes, just pure AC coupling we've done many, many times. Okay, so now the last thing, well, no, not last, couple others. So we want to make it easier for less experienced solar designers to be able to do battery-based systems. And so we've come up with this solar calculator. It's in alpha, I would say, right now. Because we're doing a lot of tweaking. So anyway, let me answer this. Do you offer a way to read system data, power, voltage over Modbus directly? And if so, do you have a register mapping? Yes, we do, but we do not give those out so easily. If you write the wrong Modbus registers, you can damage our system, and you will have to pay for it, the repairs. So we don't willy-nilly give our Modbus commands out. You have to have some very good reasons. So, okay. All right. Let's talk about the solar calculator. Number one, we're going to input our zip code. We're going to find out what our peak sun hours are throughout the year and have the average sun hours throughout the year. Then we can input our monthly bill. Everybody should know their monthly bill. This is going to be kind of hard for those off-gridders though. Anyway, but most people know their bill. They don't really know their kilowatt hours that they consume. So this will use your average electricity in your zip code, and it will calculate how many kilowatt hours you use on a daily basis. And then it will also calculate how much solar panel wattage you need from that. Then we're going to say, hey, well, what kinds of things do I want to run on the batteries or for time of use? So you can go in here and you can select different essentials and luxury items, and it will tell you how much kilowatt hours you're on average using per day for the backup requirements. And then from that, it'll calculate an approximate battery kilowatt hours for one day. And we can select 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. Can we have this calculator? Yes, you can. It's going to be on our website in February. So you can use it and take advantage of it. Now, so here's how we just did the essentials, like a couple refrigerators, a couple freezers, a gas furnace, which is really just a blower, a gas hot water heater, which uses 0 electricity, garage door opener, let's see, stovetop gas, that's just an igniter, a microwave, and that's about it. And so we didn't have a large battery need for these simple things. Now here we have an all electric house. And for this, our electric, actually this should have been maybe like $300 a month, but every single time we shower for every person, that's another solar panel of energy per person per shower with electric hot water heater. And actually 2 in the wintertime. Refrigerators, now the same for that. Now, what else? We wanted to do a stovetop electric, a dryer, and now this is the killer. This is the when you can select anywhere from none to 8 tons of air conditioning, and we're going to calculate our daily kilowatt usage based upon how much our bill was, but also our backup kilowatt hours is determined by all these things. The largest being the kilowatt hours. I mean, sorry, the tons of the AC. And so you can see our ESS system needs a very large battery bank of about 35 kilowatt hours just for a single day. I have an early 8K which uses smart ESS. No, you cannot remote program the battery set points. Please check with us. There's a link on our website where you can or contact us. We prefer that everybody using the old smart ESS upgrade to the new monitoring that allows two-way, has much better tools. You just update the dongle and the app on your phone. It's so much better. What about corrections for geothermal HVAC? Ooh, those are really rare. This tool isn't really designed for that. This is designed for most terribly inefficient homes. Okay, so you'll see this coming in February.
Tom, I have a quick comment.
Yes.
We've got several folks that have their virtual hands raised, and rather than asking questions that way, we prefer that you go ahead and submit a question through the Q&A tab on the bottom of your screen. On most devices, it's on the bottom, and then that way Tom can see it, and then he can go ahead and answer it. Okay, so it looks like we have Roger, Team Preppers, and David all have a question, and it looks like Daryl just asked a question as well. So if you could put your questions into the Q&A, Tom is doing a great job of going ahead and reading them online.
Okay, great. Thanks for making that comment, because we do want questions. Mini split systems are very common. Will the calculator add this option? Yes. The mini splits and central AC units consume about the same, but we do need a separate item for them. They use they use a little bit less energy than central AC units, but the big thing with central AC is there's huge surge, and that requires a whole lot more inverter power than the mini splits. And so this calculator doesn't yet calculate the inverter kilowatts, but we're working on it. So good question. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Okay, I'm looking for PV off-grid shaving energy arbitrage time of use based in New York State. Solar energy is stored in the morning and sold to the grid between 4 and 8 p.m. when the payout is higher. I talked with Dustin and he thinks it can't be done. Could you do a follow-up call with me? Yes, we can sell back to the grid from the system. That's what I covered earlier on, where in the time of use, we now can store the energy and we can sell it back to the grid in certain times. So yes, you can do that now. Since you mentioned other inverters, do you work with or plan to work with in-phase based systems? Okay, so we already work with in-phase microinverters. The in-phase ESS system, our smart load will work with. I think in-phase's battery ESS system is pretty pricey. I do like that they used LFP, but boy, it's pretty up there in terms of cost. So I think you could find some more affordable solutions besides in-phase ESS system. Do you need multiple inverters to output 3-phase? To do 2 of the 3 phases, which is what most light commercial buildings are, we just use one inverter, and it's the UPS for our computers and other stuff. If we want to do true 3-phase and do all 3 legs, then we need at least 2 systems. Thanks, Tom. Wish we had a 4 or 5K Sol-Ark to offer. I'm sorry. We don't do small inverters. We did in the past, and people just overloaded the heck out of them. Um, I and that leads to so many problems. So um, everybody is pushing us to do bigger inverters, not smaller inverters. I'm sorry. And the other thing is that the smaller the inverters you go, the more support you need because they're overloading the inverter much more often. So I'm really not a fan of smaller inverters like 4 or 5K. There are some other options out there, like Schneider has a good solution at 4K. And for 5K, I think, let's see, Outback, which one was it? The Skybox. There's a couple other lower cost solutions for 4 and 5K from those two companies I just mentioned. If using 12 kilowatt system at 240 volts AC, can a 120 volt generator be used as backup to still supply? Okay, so if you're going to use a 120 volt generator, if you wanted to charge the batteries, we have to convert that to using a transformer to convert from 120 to 240 so that we can charge the batteries. That's the only way we can do it. Aside from the forthcoming load management, what's on the product roadmap? I can't tell you that. That's top secret. I showed probably too much already. um, but there will be a lot of surprises this year. Let's see. Okay. Oh, follow-up question on microhydro. If your MPPT is already full, how would you control an AC coupled generator? AC coupled generator. Okay, we couldn't. Let me think about that. If our MPPTs are already full, no, we wouldn't be able to control the another AC coupled solution. Oh, wait a minute. No, that's not true. If our MPPTs are full, then that's DC coupled. If we have an AC coupled solution, that can come in on the gen port or on the load side. So yes, we can do AC coupled along with a fully loaded DC. Okay. When is the load management going to be available? Hopefully July. Okay. I think that is mostly done. Jay?
All right. Well, thank you very much, Tom. That was great. I like all the questions that were coming in. Very, very good. Appreciate it. Just one quick question, Tom. There was a question that came in on NABCEP credit. Is this course going to be eligible for NABCEP credit?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So we will be sending you the list of everybody that attended with their emails. And then you will take care of submitting it for credit for them. Is that right?
Yeah, please. Yeah, please send that to. You're going to send us the list, right?
Yeah, I'm going to send you a list. Yep.
Yeah. Then we'll send that to everyone that's on there.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you, everybody. The next session is going to start in a few minutes. That's going to be with Victron. And thank you for your attention. Thank you for coming today, and hope to see you at another one of these sessions real soon.